Imagine waking up before sunrise knowing that by the end of the day you would either be free or dead. Now imagine making that choice while living in chains. This is the true story of the Stono Rebellion of 1739, the first major slave uprising in what would later become the United States. It was a desperate fight for freedom that shook the foundation of slavery in North America and changed history forever. One would ask, how did a small group of enslaved Africa nearly bring an entire colony to its knees? By the early 1700s, South Carolina had become one of Britain's richest colonies. Vast rice plantations covered the land, producing enormous wealth for white plantation owners. But the wealth came at a terrible cost. Thousands of Africans had been captured from their homes, forced onto slave ships, and transported across the Atlantic Ocean. Many came from the Kingdom of Congo in Central Africa, where some had military experience and were familiar with firearms and organized warfare. Every day was filled with exhausting labor under the hot sun. Families were separated, punishments were brutal, hope seemed almost impossible. Yet many enslaved Africans refused to accept that slavery would be their final destiny. To the south lay Spanish Florida. Spain had announced that enslaved people escaping from British colonies could gain freedom if they reached Florida, accepted Catholicism, and agreed to serve the Spanish crown. To many enslaved Africans in South Carolina, Florida became a symbol of hope. Among those dreaming of freedom was a man remembered as Jemmy, believed to have been born in the Kingdom of Congo. He would soon become the leader of one of the boldest rebellions in American history. On the morning of September 9, 1739, while many white colonists were preparing for church services, Jemmy gathered about 20 enslaved Africans near the Stono River. Their first target was a small store owned by two white merchants. The rebels attacked swiftly. The storekeepers were killed, and the group seized guns, gunpowders, ammunition, and supplies. Now armed, they raised a banner that read "Liberty." As they marched towards Florida, they beat drums, sang songs from their homelands, and called on other enslaved Africans to join them. With every plantations they passed, more people broke their chains and joined the march. The rebellion quickly grew from around 20 fighters to somewhere between 60 and 100 people. As the rebels advanced, they attacked several plantations along the road. Slave owners who resisted were killed. Some homes and plantations buildings were set on fire. Many enslaved workers chose to join the rebellion, while others stayed behind, fearing the consequences if their uprising failed. The rebels continued marching south with growing confidence. For a brief moment, freedom seemed within reach. News of the rebellion spread rapidly across South Carolina. Horsemen raced from plantation to plantation, warning settlers that armed enslaved Africans were moving through the countryside. The colonial government quickly organized local militias. Plantation owners, hunters, and armed volunteers gathered on horseback. Unlike the rebels, these militias knew the local terrain and could move quickly. Soon, they began tracking Jemmy's group. Later that same day, the militias caught up with the rebels. What followed was the largest battle of the Stono Rebellion. The fighting was fierce. The rebels fought with sword and guns. Many had military discipline, likely learned before being enslaved in Africa. Despite their courage, they were heavily outnumbered and lacked enough ammunition. The colonial militia surrounded them. Gunfire echoed through the forest and field. One by one, the rebel fell. Some continued fighting until they were killed. Others escaped into nearby swamps and forests, hoping to reach Florida another day. The militia eventually broke the rebellion. The fighting did not end with the main battle. Over the following days and weeks, colonial patrols searched for survivor rebels. Small skirmishes occurred whenever escapees were discovered. Some resisted arrest and were killed. Others were captured alive. Many were executed as a warning. Several of them had their heads placed along grooves as a brutal display meant to spread fear. Around 20 to 35 white colonists had been killed. Roughly 35 to 50 rebels died during the fighting or were executed afterwards. The uprising terrified slave owners across the British colonies. They realized that enslaved Africans were not simply accepting slavery. They were willing to fight and die for freedom. The following year, South Carolina passed one of the harshest slave laws in colonial America, known as the Negro Act of 1740. It imposed severe restriction on enslaved Africans. They could no longer gather in large groups without supervision. Learning to read and write became even more restricted. Although the Stono Rebellion failed militarily, it succeeded in sending a powerful message. The desire for freedom could never be completely crushed. The courage shown by Jemmy and his followers inspired future generations of enslaved people able to resist. Today, the Stono Rebellion stands as one of the earliest and most powerful acts of resistance against slavery in North American history. If this story moved you, remember that many chapters of African and Black history remain untold. Subscribe to our channel, share this video, and join us as we continue uncovering the stories that shaped our world.